Okay, so I'm going to ask Charlie 3 questions, and then we'll open up to the group. Number 1, what is the greatest lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur and business owner?
Well, I think, one thing as an entrepreneur, you got to be willing to face the wall, or hit bottom. And until you've done that, you haven't really been an entrepreneur. And I know, Brian, you've been there already, so you've been through that. But I think any of you that are shaking your head in here, know what I'm saying. And until you have to make payroll and borrow on your house, you haven't been a real entrepreneur.
So when Charlie was referring to me, he meant not only that I was an entrepreneur, but I went through the tough times as well. So but it teaches a lot of great lessons. Number 2, do you see an age when our country will not need coal for power at all?
Well, we were just talking about that, and in our session ahead of this presentation, but I do think there's some exotic forms related to hydrogen that are coming. And I think we will. I don't think it's in my time. It might not even be my grandkids' time. But there are things out there that I think will be developed. I'm an engineer by training, Colorado School of Mines graduate, and I really believe in research. And we know of things that potentially could be there. We just got to get them to work and can afford them.
If you could make one change to U.S. energy policy that would have the most positive impact, what would it be?
Well, I think making sure we do all of the above energy. I don't think we need to have winners and pick winners and losers. I really believe in let the marketplace work, and I think we just can't say we're not going to use hydrocarbons. I know there's a lot of push that says all renewables, but until you can figure out how to store electricity, it just isn't going to happen. And maybe that'll come too. Maybe we'll figure that out, how to store electricity, but can't get enough batteries to support the kind of electricity that's got to be stored. And it's a big issue, big problem to generate the energy it takes to run this country. It's a huge amount of energy.
Okay, what questions do you all have? So I'm going to hand you the microphone because there's this vent right here that I can't hear you right now, and I want to make sure you repeat it.
All right, thank you for talk. Sandon Skidneski. Do you see any technologies coming up that are not thermal in terms of generating coal that would have efficiency boosts or cut down on carbon if you're looking to cut down on carbon, things like that?
Yeah, I do. I think there are things that will be coming. Right now, we're still stuck in thermal. And, nuclear's not thermal. I'm going to believe we ought to be building some more nuclear power plants, but, it's the NIMBY concept, not in my backyard, right? I mean, that you talk about non-thermal and and green, non-polluting. I mean, nuclear's it, but, we've all seen, the problems that have come from that. But I think that can be done safely today, but people just, especially in Japan, I mean, they're building a dozen new coal-fired power plants in Japan because they don't want nuclear, and they don't have shales, and so they're building coal-fired power plants in Japan.
Okay, next question. Somebody over here? Come on. There we go. Yes.
I'm sure you've looked into this before, but you said your trains come back empty from Texas. Is there any money in bringing back fly ash for all the concrete right here?
So the question is, your trains come back empty from Texas after you ship the coal down there. Have you thought of putting things in there mainly for the cement industry?
There's been a lot of studies and trying to figure something out, but the problem is the time it takes to load that and bring it back, and there's not enough fly ash, first of all, out there to go around to do that. It's just so efficient to keep those trains running round the clock, and unfortunately, we're just hauling air back, But it's amazing how cheap that is to still do it that way.
So if anybody wants a free ride from Texas, you can jump one of your trains? Is that what you're saying? Sorry, I had to put that in there. What other questions do we have? Yes, Kyle. Do you have any plans to do any mergers and acquisitions in any other spaces, specifically clean technologies, et cetera?
Yeah, definitely clean technologies. I do. I haven't gotten into the the solar and wind side just because I can't do it all. I mean, I'm just focused on hydrocarbons, and it's not to say I wouldn't, and I do believe in those things. And if it wasn't for the tax credits wind and solar get, they wouldn't be able to compete today either. But as a society, we've decided we're all paying for wind and solar, believe it or not, through our taxes, if you will. And I'm not against that if that's what we've all decided to do, but we have decided to do that. It's just at some point, I think wind and solar's got to stand on its own. I think it's getting close to doing that. But that's why I haven't gone there, Kyle. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, on your slide with coal-burning power plants around the world, I think you had like 8 different columns, and they were like 62 in the rest of the world. So where do the other 200-some countries get their power?
Do you want to try to pull that slide back up, or? I think we can flip it back up. So the question is, with regards to the existing and ones that are in construction, where are the other 200? So.
Yeah, the other 200 countries. There's some of those that don't have power, but for instance, I've got the rest of the world there too. But there's some countries that are, like Norway, are blessed with a lot of hydropower, where they're getting their power, and I'm not sure I know where necessarily all the other 200 countries are. I think some of them are buying power, from across border, some of the smaller countries, that type of thing. But any of the large countries are pretty well what you see up here.
So as they move out of that electricity poverty they were talking about, so less than 24 hours on, how are they going to get power if it's not from coal? Or would you expect to see that increase in there be more coal power plants?
Let me just repeat the question. We're just going to repeat the question so we can get it recorded. So the question is, of the 1.2 billion people that do not have access to power, where do you see those coming online, in which countries mainly? Was that the question, basically?
How are they going to come on? Is it going to require more coal plants?
Okay. Is it going to require more coal plants?
Yeah, I think the reality is it is going to require more coal plants, and that's why I'm an advocate. We, the United States, got to figure out how to clean it. If we've cleaned up everything else, it's just CO2. If that's what we've got to still figure out, there's ways to get there. It's just a cost factor, and we just got to, put the dollars towards. We got to commit the dollars there to get the research to get it done. Being an engineer, I'm a real advocate of research. We usually can figure it out if you put enough money to that resource to get it done. But the reality is coal is still, the cheapest source of energy. It's such a compact source of energy in coal and oil and gas. All hydrocarbons are your most compact forms of energy we have out there.
What are the questions? Yes, Christina.
So I'm a native New Yorker that's lived in Colorado for 21 years. I have been to Williston, North Dakota with my husband and seen what happens there. I go back to New York and argue with my family. They live in Long Island and Westchester, Illinois Shore. And they're closing in Como as bubbles under the pressure of environmentalists. So what happens in our own country, in states where so New York has outlawed fracking, they have no natural gas, and no one's building nuclear power plants. So what happens to states who just, storm off and walk away and don't participate in the game?
How many of you, before I repeat that question, how many of you seen the movie Frack Nation? Anybody? I recommend you watch it. Very interesting movie. It's a documentary on fracking in our country, and specifically states that have allowed it and those who have said no to it, and the economic impact. So Christina's question, in states like New York, where she's originally from, who are saying no to fracking and some of these other forms of energy exploration, what happens to them in the long run compared to states who are actually exploring those rules?
Well, it's interesting. Pennsylvania and New York, share state lines there. So in Pennsylvania, I mean, they've embraced fracking big time, and all the Marcellus oil and gas. So you go right up to the state line there, and there's drilling, and then you go across New York, there's no drilling, right? So the reality is, New York City is getting their power across state borders. It's come across transmission lines. It's kind of like California. I mean, California, there's no coal-fired power plants in California, but they're getting it from Nevada, they're getting it from New Mexico, right? So that's how they kind of get around it.
What other questions? Pranima.
Are you just locally focused, or are you interested in international presence, or do you have international presence?
So Pranima is head of the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce, so her question is a little bit loaded, okay? Just want to have full disclosure at the Opportunity Coalition. Her question is, are you just locally and regionally focused in the U.S., or are you looking at international opportunities as well?
Yeah, I really haven't looked beyond the borders. We've been so busy here just taking care of ourselves here, but you know, I think it is something that, you know, other companies probably would be. I'm not sure I'm equipped to go to India and do that, but willing to talk to you about it. What did we say?
She said if you want to invite her to lunch, she's all ready, so that's good. One last question, and then we'll let you all get going. Yes?
I'm from Oklahoma, and we have 4 earthquakes in the state of California. They say it was due to fracking, and they say it was due to saltwater disposal. I believe it's saltwater disposal. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So let me just try to repeat. It sounds like there's a question coming up, though, too. He's from Oklahoma. They have more earthquakes than California. And do you believe it was due to fracking, or I didn't catch the last second part? Saltwater disposal. Okay. And then do you have a question? Was that the question, or should there be another one?
No, the question is, what do you think it is?
Oh.
I personally think it's saltwater.
Okay. What do you think it is? Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's saltwater disposal, and they're working on it as far as, you know, what different zones they could be disposing of salt water. But it's you know, fractures are really fault zones that are getting loosened up from that saltwater disposal. So they got to work on zones that wouldn't connect to those faults.
Why don't you explain saltwater disposal?
Yeah, saltwater disposal. When you drill wells, oftentimes, you know, the seawater when this you know, was formed and developed is still down there, and so a lot of times you've got to dispose of that seawater. So you put it down into other formations. That's what you do. So that's what I think is happening there.